Welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Ask Judy. This is where I take your questions and do my best to answer them. If you're enjoying these segments, please do like and subscribe. So I take up various different questions in these Ask Judy segments. So if you think that there's a question you have, you can always check back and see if I have answered it in one of the previous Ask Judys. If not, feel free to put the question in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to it. So here we go. Someone asked about what the parents or guardians did all day on the set. I had mentioned that they would knit or they would read, things like that, or they'd watch the filming if they were interested, depending on what the scene was. They'd chit-chat. Anyway, I happened to come across a couple of pictures on the back lot. This would be by the Walton house, where you see some of the parents, guardians, and even one of our school teachers engaged in activities, sewing and whatnot. So there you go. Deanne asked, which episode challenged my acting skills the most? Ooh, that's tough. It's hard to remember all the specifics. I was challenged by the grandchild because I'd never had a child. So having to determine and make choices about the actual giving birth, what that might be like. I did research and did my best, so hopefully it was believable. The other one that was challenging was the Tempest, when Kurt came back, when we found out he was still alive. That episode was challenging for a number of reasons. I found I had some difficulty with the storyline and with some of the aspects of that, some of the dialogue. I found difficult to find a way to believe in that circumstance. There were just some challenging circumstances. And as an actor, you're always looking for how you can connect to it to make it as realistic as possible. So that one was a challenge for me. Jonathan asked me what was my favorite part of Battle of the Network Stars. I did 3 Battle of the Network Stars. I'm very competitive and I love sports. Sports have been my hobbies throughout my life. So doing battle, I loved everything about it. I loved the competition. I loved meeting all the other actors. I loved challenging myself to do new things. I think one of the things that was the most fun for me was I'd never really played football. I'd never thrown a football or caught a football. And I remember taking a football to the set with me on the Waltons because we were filming and having the guys on the crew throw the football and help me learn how to catch it. I was like, for that, I didn't need to learn how to throw, but I said, I just have to be able to catch. So at downtime when, I wasn't working or a crew member had a little bit of time because they were shooting something he wasn't needed for, I'd have them throw a football. So the crew was very instrumental in helping me learn how to catch a football, which came in very handy. I did very well in the football in Battle of the Network Stars. So thanks for the question. This question from Jamie. Did you get to meet Earl Hamner and his family or see the family homestead? Yes, both. I mean, Earl was around the set all the time because he was one of the producers. He was a story editor. He was just involved with the show all the way through as a consultant and as a producer. His family, many members of his family came to visit the set at one time or another. Marion Hamner Hawks, who I portrayed, who was, the real life Mary Ellen, she came to the set a couple times and I got to spend some time with her and she was lovely. She gave me this wonderful locket that I had for many years, still have. So I really enjoyed her company, and I think a number of the other Walton real Hamner siblings came to the set. The first time I actually got to go see the homestead was many years after we finished filming the Waltons. I believe it was in the early 90s when they opened the museum in Schuyler, Virginia, which is right across the street from Earl Hamner's childhood home, the Hamner House. And that was the first time I saw the actual Hamner house and had a chance to sort of see the surrounding area where Earl grew up. So that was pretty special. The family was lovely and very gracious about the show and us bringing their lives onto the public forum and telling stories that in some cases were based on fact and many times just based on fiction. So I'm sure they got tons of questions. And I know Earl's mother, people would show up at the house and knock on the door and want to visit. And she was always very gracious, from what I understand, and would invite them to have tea, coffee, whatever, and sit on the porch and talk with them. So I'm sure that was a real treat for people. Jamie asked about school on the set, saying, as a teacher, I'm wondering how school was structured. I can imagine how frustrated your teachers must have been to be right in the middle of a great lesson and then have an assistant pop in and pull everyone for a scene. Sterling added on, what was it like having lessons on the set? We hear that child actors have to go to school on the set, but that's always about as far as it goes. I would be interested in what that was like and how the different subjects were handled and what your school day or hours looked like. So yes, we did have school every day, Monday through Friday during the shooting season. We were required by the California school education with the studio, all those rules and stuff like that, technically to do 3 hours a day of schooling. We had teachers on the set who were accredited teachers. They were certified in the California school system. And that 3 hours would be broken up throughout the day. So it was very frustrating sometimes to be in the middle of something and have an assistant director, a production assistant come in and go, we need you on the set. The teachers said that if we weren't there for a minimum of 20 minutes, we couldn't count the time. So we would accrue 20-minute increments sometimes throughout the day. Sometimes you'd get half an hour or more if you weren't in a scene or it was taking a little longer to set things up. But yeah, it was a lot of popping in and out and trying to pick up where you left off. How we structured it during the day was a little bit up to us. It might be, oh, I'm going to do science, or I'm going to do my literature class, or whatever it might be. I think each of us kind of decided what we wanted to work on at a particular time. We would coordinate those lessons with our teacher, and then we'd get to work. So we did a lot of self-study. But the great thing was that because we had, just a couple of tutors for 6, not everybody needed the teacher right at that moment. And if you needed help with something and the teacher was busy with, for me, Eric or John, then I'd just go on to something else until the teacher was available and could help me. So I got a lot of one-on-one attention, which was fabulous on some of the subjects that maybe I struggled with more. So I feel that in many ways, I got a better education at the studio than I might have gotten had I been in high school throughout that time just at public school because of the one-on-one time. Thank you so much for all of your questions on this segment of Ask Judy, and I will see you next time for another Behind the Scenes of the Waltons or another Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.